Welcome to the Happy, Healthy Life Podcast with your hosts, Rob and Randy, who reveal the truth, the lies, and confusion about health so that you are no longer the victim to mainstream medical dogma and you are the hero to your own happy, healthy story.
Welcome to the Happy, Healthy Life Podcast with Rob and Randy. Today is a show that you guys are going to want to listen to. We are talking today about why is it you can't lose weight and the hormone responsible for storing fats. Last week, we talked about the 3 steps to boosting your metabolism. Today, we're going to unpack a lot of what we were talking about from the feedback that we got from people. We've had great feedback, by the way. Thank you guys so much for listening to the show. We appreciate that. We see that this is something that's making a difference in people's lives. This is episode number 5. It looks like we're going to keep doing this.
Yeah, I met a husband and wife at my nephew's football game this last weekend in Rockwall, Texas. And we got to talking, and they were all about health and wellness and holistic health and raising healthy kids. And I got to talk about the podcast. And so they had already jumped on, had given us a review, gave it a 5-star, and have already said they're getting great information that's so usable. And so we want to be able to do that. We're not here just to hear ourselves talk. That's not fun. What we're coming to you with are real life situations, solutions, and problems that can be corrected and identified holistically. And the results can be pretty phenomenal. And we unpacked a lot last episode. So I like today how we're kind of dialing it back in and getting focused on one super simple, important thing.
Absolutely. And one of the things we talked about last week, and some other people may have had this question, but I got a question. It was actually from my sister, who was listening to the podcast, and she was asking, hey, you know what, I'm doing this fasting. And it was interesting because she asked me about intermittent fasting on the same day that we actually recorded the podcast. I'm like, we actually just answered that question today. And the question she had asked me was, hey, if I'm going to be fasting today, can I still go on my hike? Can I work out? Also, she was asking me about the kinds of, could she drink coffee during that time period or drink water? What could she actually put into her body? And what I told her is you can have coffee, you could have tea, you could have water, but you want to make sure that you're getting all of the health benefits, which we're going to go into more from a nutritional standpoint today versus the fasting. That's a whole nother topic for a different day. But yeah, you can have coffee, tea, or water. I was so proud of her because she didn't eat until dinner that night, and she has now done several 24-hour fasts since that. She says that she's experiencing just a better overall feeling, more mental clarity. She's just feeling better and feeling healthier. She's not hungry, which is really cool as well. So those of you guys who are thinking, hey, I could never do a 24-hour fast, you know what? You're lying to yourself. You can actually do it.
Absolutely. And so today we're really going to dive in. The big myth about weight loss is because we're going to talk about the number one reason why people have weight loss resistance and they cannot lose weight and keep it off. But I think I want to start off, Rob, before we even go down that road. What is the real myth that I believe most everybody believes? And it's what I used to believe about weight. And I even taught this to patients and clients for years. And so never be too staunch in what you think is the absolute truth. Be open to truth, be open to change. And when the facts reveal themselves, be open to changing your opinion, and which is what we're doing today. But I think the big myth is that it's the calories in, calories out myth of weight loss. So basically it's saying if I eat less and burn more calories than I eat, then I'll be able to lose weight and keep that off. And why would you say, Rob, that's really not actually true?
Well, it's not actually true, not only speaking from personal experience, from my story, but just like we were talking about earlier today, we were talking about things like stress.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Does stress actually have calories?
Yeah. So how many calories are in sleep deprivation, Rob?
Yeah, 0.
How many carbs are in being late on your mortgage payment?
0.
So there's no calories, there's no carbohydrates, yet we already know, and the research is out there. Look it up for yourself. There's plenty to read, that being in a high level of stress, whether it's chemical, physical, emotional, your body will release a hormone called cortisol. Cortisol tells your body to release sugar into the bloodstream. And then, of course, when that happens, This is the hormone that you have to know about. It's the number one reason why people gain weight is now your body has to secrete.
Right. And hold on before. It's insulin. Okay. But before we go there, I think people also understand that when they are stressed, and we're telling you why that happens, that when you are stressed, it is harder to be able to lose weight. And
it's almost impossible.
It's almost impossible to be able to lose weight. Yes. And this is why, right? Because when the cortisol goes up, what happens?
Yeah. When cortisol goes up, remember, it's telling your body to release glucose from the liver into the bloodstream. And now because there's sugar in the bloodstream, insulin has to release, because that's insulin's job, is to keep your blood sugar stable. Insulin's not necessarily a bad thing. It's a normal part of a healthy metabolic process. We're going to talk about why inflated levels of insulin, consistently releasing insulin and causing hyperinsulinemia, where you've got constant levels of high insulin in your blood, is making it impossible for you to lose weight and keep it off. In fact, it actually is doing the opposite, because when you understand the basic biochemistry of the hormone insulin and what it does, it is a bulking hormone. It makes you huge. And I always like to talk about maybe some of the mistakes that I've made in my own past. I want to kind of maybe go through the dietary strategies I used to use over the years and where I am now, and how you and I have both made big changes, but not just because of an education, but because we've been there, we've done that, and we've really utilized it with making mistakes and then now improving and doing better. But with insulin, remember, its job is to help lower blood sugar, keep your blood sugar stable. And we talked about even last episode, the problem is now we're seeing increased levels of insulin, and we'll tell you why. But my very first diet I ever did was back in 1992. Rob, were you even born back in 1992?
Oh, I think I was probably already 45.
Yeah. So some of you are like, I wasn't even born back in 1992, but as 1992, I had just graduated high school, and my best friend, Brent Gentry, had challenged me to a competition to get in the best shape that summer, that we were going to be going to Destin, Florida. So we did a no fat diet because fats at that time, we were being told that they make you fat. So it's very simple. You eat low fat Twinkies. You're making milkshakes with non-fat ice cream.
And real story. I can remember during that time period, because I happen to love Twinkies. And one of my reasons for eating them is because if you looked at the label, there was no fat in the Twinkie. So then I figured, okay, you can eat the Twinkie because there's no fat, so you're not going to get fat.
No, that was the whole, the myth back then was that fat causes you to be fat, which we know it's actually quite the opposite. But at that time, and you know me, if I'm in on something,
you're 100%.
I'm in. So I'm doing zero fat whatsoever. So I went through that phase. Clearly that burned out. Then I get off to college, and I started doing a program called the Anabolic Diet. It was this modified keto diet. It was definitely dirty keto, and I got kidney stones. Which is really why a long-term ketogenic diet really doesn't make the most sense, especially when you're not having any carbohydrate. But yeah, so I wrecked my kidneys. My electrolytes were completely out of balance. I was getting muscle cramps all the time, poor energy, not sleeping well. So that didn't work. And so then I'm like, well, wait a second. I started reading all the bodybuilding magazines, and they were talking about eating multiple times a day. So to graze, to basically stoke your metabolism. So I'd eat a breakfast, a snack, a lunch, another snack, a dinner, and then I would definitely have a late night snack before going to bed. And my mindset was around, okay, and now I'm eating multiple times to stoke and burn more body fat. And actually what I was doing was the opposite of that, because in our mind, we're thinking if I don't eat, my metabolism slows down. But here's what happens when you eat multiple times a day. By the way, every time you eat, you secrete the hormone insulin, which once again is going to make you huge. So you eat, insulin goes up. And now if you keep doing that, you're putting your body into fat storage versus fat burning. Lipogenesis, fat storage, lipolysis, fat burning. But when you eat multiple times a day, you're telling your body that there's a plethora of access to food, much like our ancestors. So they're going to be storing all the food as body fat, preparing for when you don't have the food or when the famine's coming, that you've got reserves. So you're not actually stoking your metabolism. You're telling your body to get prepared for the famine, because now take advantage of storing fat for energy because there's a plethora of food. So that was my strategy. And that led me right up into my cancer diagnosis. So how the heck got to get cancer? Well, what do we know feeds cancer? Sugar and insulin. So I'm literally eating all day long, trying to make myself big. In fact, I always give the example of the bodybuilding world, because when you look at bodybuilders, they eat 5, 6, 7 times a day to make them what?
Huge.
They have to be big. These are your professional bodybuilders. The only problem with that is when you eat multiple times a day and secrete insulin to make you big, you're in that growth mode. The problem is high insulin means low testosterone. So you wreck your sex hormone. So that's why they have to do anabolic steroids. So they don't just get big, they get big and they get muscular. So I was basically living a bodybuilder lifestyle, eating multiple times a day. I wasn't doing any steroids, which is why I didn't really ever get that big as I could have been. But I was carrying about 185 pounds. And now after going through what I went through with getting diagnosed with late stage cancer, overcoming that naturally, then coming out of that, now I eat maybe 2 times a day, no more than 3. I do a lot of fasting. And the reason I do that is twofold. Number one is to reduce my insulin load on my body, to make sure that my body's burning fat and not burning sugar. And I do it for the anti-inflammatory properties as well, because you don't want to be in growth mode past 18 years old. Why would you be growing? You want to be in repair mode. And so lowering insulin is so key, not only in your weight loss journey, but to get your body fat adapted, keeping your blood sugar stable, and making sure that your weight is now under control. Because if you eat all day long, it's going to be almost impossible. You're going to have to exercise 18 hours a day to even try to control that. And we already know it takes 3,500 calories burned to lose 1 pound of body fat.
Yeah. And I think it's yes. And I think it's important to note too, because for some of the listeners, maybe if you're watching us like on YouTube and you saw even Randy before all this happened, you would look at him and you would say, okay, he's healthy, because a lot of people equate health to being thin, right?
Yes.
So here's the thing is everybody's body is different, which is why even this morning we were on Good Morning Texas on our TV segment. We say, okay, test, don't guess, find out what's going on with you, because everybody is different. We always talk about like human variability, right?
Yes.
So then if you take a look, for example, like me, because my body is different, the cells in my body are different than the cells in your body. We go back and look at the strategy that I had that some people may take. And like we were talking about at the very beginning of the segment, is it's all about calories in or calories out. And if that's how you define losing weight, because that's what my mom had been taught. And so somebody taught her that. So I'm like, okay, if that's the deal, here I was 13 years old, 210 pounds, then how am I going to lose the weight? I'm just going to reduce the calories that are going in. So for me, my strategy at that point, that was the first diet that I had ever gone on. It's called the Starvation Diet, where you just don't eat anything. And so I lost weight. So I went from 210 pounds all the way down to 124 pounds in about 3 to 4 months.
Wow.
Which is crazy because I wasn't eating. Was it working to lose the weight? Yes, but I was also starving the cells in my body. And by the way, starvation and fasting are 2 different things.
Yes,
so I don't want you guys
clarifying that.
Yeah, so I don't want the listeners to think that, okay, I'm starving myself because I'm doing this fasting. That's why it's intermittent fasting, right? It's going through cycles. And so I wasn't intermittent fasting. I was going literally like 6 days without eating anything. And then I'd eat a pizza pocket. And then I would start that cycle again, drinking water. And I was freaking hungry as all get out, which lets us know what we know now is that my body was not fat adapted and not necessarily using fat for fuel. And so what I was now doing is I was training my body to be waiting until it finally did get a meal, because it didn't know when it was going to get a meal again. So if it did have any food, it's like, you know what, I'm going to take that and store that for fat so I can use it later on down the road, because I may not actually get fed ever again.
Yeah. And that's why you weren't using fasting strategies. You were using starvation strategies.
There's a difference, right?
Yeah.
So the cells weren't getting the nutrients that they needed to be able to function, to be able to survive, to be able to keep my metabolism working, because as we talk about metabolism, the word literally just means change. Yeah. So it's changing the food that you're putting into your body, changing that into energy so that your body can be able to utilize that for its fuel. So then fast forward, what I was doing is I was teaching my metabolism how not to work.
Yeah.
So then it was, okay, well, if that didn't work, the next strategy was then exercise more. So I'm exercising, starving myself, was super thin, but I wasn't healthy. So you can be thin and not healthy, right? And that right there is exactly what happens. So that's why I struggled for such a long time with being able to not just lose weight, but to maintain a healthy weight long-term, is because I had completely wrecked my metabolism.
Yeah. So needless to say, Rob, we made a few mistakes along the way. It wasn't for a lack of trying, because we were trying to do everything we could for different reasons, but ultimately led us to the same place, because what we've now done over the last, I don't know how many years, is we really dove into the science and started learning about what is real metabolic health and how is that tied not only to weight loss resistance, but to all chronic inflammatory diseases, not just obesity, cancer, heart disease, stroke, diabetes. And the common denominator in all metabolic disruption is the hormone that we keep going back to. It is the hormone insulin. It is insulin. In fact, we developed with Happy Healthy, we developed really a 3-pronged approach to address this, to help make sure that your body can burn fat for fuel and not be insulin dependent. But one thing that we know, and this is why when it's the calories in, calories out theory, it's so flawed, is hormones control really what you weigh.
Totally.
And so there's a part of your brain called the hypothalamus, and it really sets your weight at a certain point. We kind of refer to it as like the thermostat. If you can imagine in your home and you set your thermostat at a certain temperature, it doesn't really matter what's going on the outside. Ultimately, it's going to bring that temperature right back to where you set it. So your hypothalamus, which is a key part of your brain, tells your body where it's going to be. And what controls the weight set point for your hypothalamus is your insulin levels. Are you insulin sensitive or are you insulin resistant? And so because of that, if your hypothalamic weight set point is set wrong, you have to reset it. So that's really been step one for us clinically and working with our clients, is reestablishing a brand new hypothalamic weight set point. And one of the ways to do that is by controlling and minimizing the impact of insulin on your metabolism. That way we can get somebody, which is the third piece, getting them fat adapted, which is not a ketogenic diet. That means your body can go in and out of fat burning whenever it needs to, because a healthy metabolism can burn protein, sugar, fats for energy, and it doesn't have to be dependent on one source. It can use whatever it needs to in that moment to produce energy for your body, which is really the way you want to do it. You don't want to have, cut any food group necessarily out of your body forever, because your body needs fruits and vegetables and proteins and healthy fats. So looking at that, I wanted to read this quote from Gary Taubes. I might be saying his last name wrong, but he says that, and this going back to the hypothalamic weight set point in insulin, he says that we don't get fat because we overeat. We overeat because we get fat. Insulin makes you hungry.
It does.
So every time you snack, you take a bite of the cookie, the handful of almonds, the sip of your soda, everything we're doing is secreting insulin, and it's telling you in your brain to eat more. And so it's not the food, it's what your brain telling you to do. And that's directly controlled by your insulin levels. Now, here's the good news. And we're going to give you some real practical solutions here. There are things you can do to minimize your insulin load and to reestablish proper insulin sensitivity, which is going to be the key to your weight loss goals. Everybody knows this one, so we're not going to spend a lot of time on it. Minimize processed sugar or eliminate it completely, and stop eating refined carbohydrates, bread, pasta, rice, cereals, grains. We know that. Most people listening are like, I know that, I'm doing that. It has made a difference. But I think the next piece that I want to reveal, I think is even more important than minimizing processed sugar and refined carbohydrates.
Yeah, and here's the thing, just because we don't have a ton of time with the podcast, and even as I'm watching, it's like, oh my gosh, how do we get to here? Is that we'll go through step one in this solution, and then next week we'll go into step, not just step one, reviewing that, but we'll go into the next step for that as well. So you guys can understand what fats that you guys should be putting in. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the ones to avoid.
Okay. I like that.
Next week, we're going to talk about the ones to put into your diet that can be able to give you the biggest bang for your buck when it comes to your health.
Yeah. So what the heck does fat have to do with your insulin levels and your ability for the cells to absorb and take up sugar or glucose? What the heck? I thought it was all about carbs and sugar. Tell me, Dr. Rob, what does fat have to do with that?
It has everything to do with it. Okay. And here's so much so is that 50% of your brain is made up of fat. So you need that. 40% of the cell membranes in the body are made up of fat. So you need them. And that's what we talk about. Metabolism is literally changing the things that you eat into what's going to be usable inside the body. So if you put things into your body that are not usable, the body can't do anything with it. And one of the things that we always call these things, it's the difference between having real fats and fake fats, right? So if you put fake fats in your body, the impact that has on your insulin is literally damaging to your body, not just from a metabolic standpoint. If you're thinking about losing weight, really, and this we talk about even with the cancer that you had, it really has deleterious effects on your overall health.
Oh, and I was eating all these fats. So here's the fats you really want to avoid.
Yes.
It's linoleic acid. It's the omega-6s. It's the polyunsaturated fatty acids, the PUFAs, the nut and the seed oils. Those oils raise your insulin and cause serious hunger. In fact, we were talking about this earlier. And I don't have any experience in this, but if you've ever smoked weed and you got the munchies, the same receptors in the brain that the cannabinoid system uses, that the same thing happens when you eat polyunsaturated fatty acids. Linoleic acid tells those same receptors in the brain to make you hungry, and it raises your insulin. Are you freaking kidding me?
Yeah, absolutely. And
without the high.
Yeah. And guess who loves this? The food industry.
Oh, of course
they freaking love it.
Well, because they put it
now
in everything.
It is in everything. In fact, we were just before we were doing our segment earlier this morning on TV, we were in this coffee shop and I happened to pick up one of these so-called healthy protein bars, right? Yep. So and I'm not gonna call them out, but I'm sure everybody knows who this is or what it is. But I mean, you look in the ingredients and they've got all of the seed oils in there. They've got the linoleic acid in there. They've got the worst things in there. And then they also had sucralose in there, which is fake sugar that we already know that has damaging effects on the body. And that was in a so-called healthy protein bar. So just because you can buy it at Whole Foods doesn't mean it's healthy.
Oh, and this is one of the mistakes that I was making back before cancer is doing all the protein bars, the protein shakes, those prepackaged quote healthy foods. Guess what all of those had in them? These omega-6, linoleic acid, polyunsaturated fatty acids, these nut and these seed oils that were so inflammatory, that were raising insulin, inflaming my body, and making me freaking hungry. I couldn't go more than 2 hours without having to eat a protein bar because my blood sugar would drop so quickly and I'd spike it right back up again. No wonder it played a huge role, I believe, in my late stage cancer diagnosis.
Absolutely. And one of the things that the body needs in the whole metabolism process is you've got to have hydrogen in there. You need oxygen in there. And when you say unsaturated, what does that even mean? It means it's saturated, means it's saturated with hydrogen, which you need. Unsaturated means it doesn't have it. And unsaturated also, when you look at these are bound together, these carbon chains that are bound together by these bonds. With unsaturated, these polyunsaturated fatty acids, they have double bonds. And what those double bonds mean is it makes them a lot less stable. So if you heat these things up, your body has no idea what to do with them. It can't use it and it becomes toxic to the cells in the body. And then what does that do to the insulin?
Oh yeah, well, once again, it's cranking up your insulin. It's moving your hypothalamic weight set point to a higher level, and it's telling the brain that you're hungry. So some of these oils are like corn oil, soy oil, canola oil, all the vegetable oils, the linseed oil. what's the corn oil. It's in it's in fact that protein bar I think had corn oil in it or some type of corn derivative.
It was a corn derivative
genetically modified. So all of these nut and seed oils, peanut oil, all of these nut and seed oils are highly, highly unstable and highly inflammatory, and they're going to cause you to gain massive weight. I honestly believe that these seed and nut oils are more dangerous to your metabolism and your overall health and your insulin sensitivity than even sucrose, common table sugar.
Yeah, absolutely. And you think about these fake oils or fake fats going into your body, they create free radical damage. They create oxidation inside there. Mm-hmm. So these are all the things that create inflammation inside your body. So when you have a lot of these things going on, it's no wonder why you go to the doctor and the next thing you know, they're telling you that you have high cholesterol. Because why is the body making cholesterol?
To go heal the damage.
That's a good thing.
Right. It is a good thing. Right. And yet got to get the cholesterol down. Even worse, if you have high insulin and you're maybe even a type 2 diabetic, and they actually tell you to go on a low fat diet and eat multiple times a day. And then guess what fats they're recommending that you eat? The vegetable, these omega-6 polyunsaturated fatty acids. They tell you to stay away from the saturated fats. And they may even say you can have monounsaturated, but they definitely steer you away from some of the healthiest fats in the world, which are your saturated fatty acids, which we'll go into more detail in the next episode. But it's crazy to me. And then they give you drugs to make the cell become more receptive to the sugar. Remember, if you're insulin resistant, if you have diabetes and your cells don't absorb sugar and you have high blood sugar problems, the cell doesn't want any more sugar because it can't get any more in there. And then you're taking drugs to force it into the cell without correcting the cause. Well, that cell's going to caramelize and die, and it's going to raise your triglycerides.
Yeah. So basically you're trying to medicate your way out of something that you lifestyled your way into.
Yeah. I like trying to chemically force my body into health, right? Yeah, that's a great strategy.
Yeah. It doesn't,
the American way.
It doesn't work that way. So they're teaching you how to have heart disease. They're teaching you how to have diabetes. And so it's just, and that's what we always talk about. Knowledge is key. And so you got to have the knowledge, but not only do you have to have the knowledge, you then have to act on that and do those things. So start being more, the action step is what I would say is go into your pantry or when you're shopping at the grocery store, pick up what it is that you're buying, be intentional about what you're putting into your body. And you may say things like, well, that's more expensive. So I'm going to buy all the cheap stuff. But you know what's expensive? Heart disease is expensive, right? A heart attack is expensive. Cancer is expensive. Disease is expensive. Those are the things that are expensive. So invest into you. You are worth it. And that right there is going to pay you back dividends.
Yeah. So if we could leave you with anything, be more conscious, like I said, of what's going in your body. You should be eating less sugar. You should be eliminating refined carbohydrates. Start becoming more aware of the oils that are going into your body. Stop snacking and eating all day long. That's cranking out insulin, causing serious hunger and massive weight gain. If you'll start doing those simple things, you can start to get really huge results. And I like what you said about information, because, on our TV segments, I always close with, information without application is hallucination, or information is only valuable if you do something with it. But that's really out of Hosea 4:6, for a lack of knowledge, people perish. Sure. But it's not just knowing. The Bible's talking about applying and using the knowledge, and that's the key. So if we're making you think right now, if you're like, whoa, I didn't know that, if it's even challenging or throwing a monkey wrench into your theology, which I've had it done now thousands of times, and I've had to continue to evolve and make change, that's okay, because once you've learned it all, that's when real learning begins. Never forget that. Never be a know-it-all. Always be searching and seeking for the truth. And that's what we want to do, because we crave and desire those same things. And these are things we've done. And now 12 years later this month, from a late stage cancer diagnosis, I'm healthier than I've ever been, at an ideal weight, very healthy body fat levels, on no medication. You're obviously 50. You're probably the best shape of your life.
100%.
And it's pretty cool that we're able to use these strategies in our own lives and with our clients. So simple things. And next week, you're going to be shocked at the fats we're going to be talking about that are the healthiest fats.
I can't wait.
Oh, they'll change your metabolism very quickly.
I want to tell them right now. Can I?
I'll go as long as we need to. It's hard to get this within 20 to 30 minutes.
Yeah. We'll wait. Yeah.
All right.
We'll wait.
All right. So you're just going to tease everybody?
Yeah, absolutely. So listen to the show, watch it, subscribe, rate it, tell your friends about it, ask us questions. You can hit us up on the Happy Healthy Guys at Instagram. You can, just send us a message, ask the questions.
We want to hear from you. We love you guys. We're out.
Yeah, absolutely. Have a great day.
Thanks for listening to the Happy Healthy Life podcast. If you enjoy the show, make sure to follow them on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook at The Happy Healthy Guys. Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow, and review the show wherever you listen to podcasts.